Anthropologists and historians generally believe the earliest inhabitants of Ireland appeared somewhere between 5500 and 5000 BC. Not all agree, however, as to the origin of these prehistoric settlers. Some believe the migration came from what is now Iceland, that in some miraculous manner they succeeded in crossing the North Atlantic to settle along the western coast, eventually foraging inland in search of food. But others are convinced that they were Norsemen who sailed the northern route to Scotland and from whence they migrated to warmer latitudes. Regardless of their origin, they were a hardy race with a primitive form of farming and an ability to fashion crude tools and weapons to assist in their survival. For millennia, their existence was simple and unplanned, with the fields and forests, the rivers, lakes, and the sea providing all that was necessary to sustain them. Then there began arriving voyagers from the Near and Middle East, bringing with them improved skills in farming and the art of metalworking. More importantly, it may be reasonably assumed, they brought a new sense of human dignity and cooperative effort. If a man was not capable of a certain craft, he traded the product or service in which he excelled with another. Perhaps the most significantly important era of ancient Irish history was the arrival of the Celts, roughly between 300 and 200 BC. Southwestern Germany was the homeland of the Celts, where they had established one of the great civilizations of Western Europe. Invincible warriors with weapons of tempered iron, they conquered lands to the east and south, including France, Belgium, Spain, and parts of the Roman Empire, eventually reaching the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. There they took to their ships, sailing northward with the Gulf Stream to the southern coast of Ireland. The Celts brought with them vast improvements in planned farming, together with refinements in the craft of metalworking. But their most noteworthy contribution was a written language. They were a literate people, and it was probably the Celts who first delved into the history of their tribes, committing their accounts to stone or wood carvings or inscribed upon hides and fabrics. Stories were also related in rhythmic chants, the beginning of folklore and song. In Dublin, there is preserved one such manuscript, the Book of Kells, considered by many to be the most beautiful book ever crafted. If it can be said that a nation's people lived in a golden age, those 200 years must be marked for the Irish. Then, in the closing decades of the 8th century, disaster struck the island in the form of an invasion by hordes of Vikings. Celts united to drive the invaders back to the sea, but even though outnumbered, the Norsemen were the more experienced and better equipped warriors, quickly gaining an irreversible advantage. Their purpose was pillage, and it did not take them long to discover the richest sources of plunder were the monasteries. Sacking and torching the abbeys, they carried away the treasures, murdering all resistors. Rooted in pagan Norse mythology, nothing was sacrosanct so that much Irish history was lost forever in the destruction of books and manuscripts the mostly illiterate Norsemen considered valueless. It was not until the year 1014 that the Vikings were finally routed, primarily because many had deserted the tour of pillage to become allies of the Celts. They embraced Christianity, wedding Celtic women and rearing families. They and their descendants restored the ravaged land and rebuilt the monasteries. To an even greater degree, this was true of the Norman invasion late in the 11th century, an offshoot of the Norman conquest of Britain. The Normans were descendants of earlier Vikings, and they too began with siege and plundering, but with considerably less ruthlessness. Originally, they invaded the north of France, rapidly adapting to the customs and culture of the Gauls. They had become Christian converts, and also intermarrying and colonizing. They had become scholars and formidable warriors, brilliant in the art of military strategy. Most historians agree it was William's military astuteness that won for him the crown of England in the Battle of Hastings. Slightly more than a century later, it was strategy again that won Ireland for the Normans at the Battle of Dublin. Out of the melding of Celts, Norse, and Normans evolved a nation of people with fierce nationalistic pride and indomitable spirit.